Ademola arrived at Oluchi's home, carrying a basket of fruit. The scent of freshly cooked fried rice lingered in the air as her mother opened the door, her face lighting up when she saw him. She greeted him warmly, pulling him into a firm embrace. "Ademola, it's so good to see you," she exclaimed. "You've been such a blessing to this family." Ademola smiled politely, trying to mask the storm of emotions brewing within him. "How's Oluchi?" he asked, his voice gentle but filled with concern. Her mother nodded, her expression softening. "She's resting, but she's doing much better today. Come, let me show you to her room. She'll be happy to see you." As he followed her down the hallway, Ademola's heart pounded. He hadn't seen Oluchi since her surgery, and the thought of her being so fragile left him feeling both helpless and protective. When they reached the room, her mother gently pushed the door open. Oluchi was lying on the bed, propped up by a few pillows. Her face, pale but serene, turned toward the door as he entered. Her lips curled into a weak smile when their eyes met. "Ademola," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You came." He moved to her bedside, setting the basket of fruit on the nightstand. He sat down and took her hand in his, careful not to overwhelm her. "How are you feeling?" he asked softly. Oluchi's smile widened, though her energy was faint. "Better. I'm getting stronger every day," she replied, her voice tinged with gratitude. "Thanks to you, Ademola. I don't even know how to thank you enough for all you've done." "You don't need to thank me," he said, his voice cracking slightly as he tried to hold back his emotions. "I'm just glad you're okay. That's all that matters to me." She studied his face, her eyes filled with affection. "Ademola," she began softly, "you've always been there for me. Even when things were hard, you never left. I hope you know that I will always be here for you too." Her words made his chest tighten. He looked away momentarily, trying to compose himself. "You should rest," he said finally, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. "I'll be here as long as you need me." Just then, her mother entered the room, carrying a tray of food. "I thought you two might be hungry," she said with a warm smile, setting the tray on the small bedside table. Ademola stood and helped her arrange the food. "Thank you, Ma," he said politely before turning to Oluchi. "Do you want me to feed you?" Oluchi's cheeks flushed slightly as she nodded shyly. Ademola carefully scooped some rice onto the spoon and held it to her lips. She took the bite, her gaze never leaving his. As he continued to feed her, he glanced at her face, marveling at how even in recovery, she still looked so beautiful to him. After a moment of silence, he spoke softly. "Oluchi, can I ask you something?" She looked at him curiously. "What is it?" "Can I kiss you?" His voice was gentle but filled with emotion. Oluchi's eyes widened slightly, and a shy smile crept onto her lips. Before she could answer, Ademola leaned forward, his lips brushing against hers. She didn't pull away. Instead, she responded, her lips moving softly against his. The kiss was tender and brief, but it carried an unspoken promise. When she finally pulled back, Oluchi's face was flushed, and Ademola adjusted himself, smiling shyly. "Thank you," he murmured, his heart racing. Oluchi's smile deepened, and for the first time in weeks, a spark of hope flickered in her chest. Back at home, Olivia sat in the living room with the baby on her lap. Her frustration bubbled beneath the surface as she glanced at the clock. Ademola had been gone for hours, and she knew exactly where he was. The baby cooed softly, drawing her attention. She looked down at her child, her heart torn between love and anger. "Your father hasn't even held you once," she murmured, her voice low. "What kind of man refuses to acknowledge his own child?" She heard the front door open and quickly rose to her feet, cradling the baby. Ademola walked in, his expression tired and distant. "Ademola," she said, forcing a smile as she approached him. "When are we dedicating the baby? It's been 3 months already." He barely looked at her as he sank into the couch, pulling out his phone. "Let's do it this week," he said curtly, not lifting his gaze from the screen. "But I want a very small event." Her forced smile faltered. "Why so small?" she asked, her tone sharp. "Are you trying to show Oluchi that she still has a place in your life?" Ademila's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. "What are you trying to say, Olivia?" "You know exactly what I mean," she replied, her voice rising. "You spend more time at Oluchi's house than you do here. Now you want a small dedication just to keep her comfortable." His jaw tightened as he rose from the couch, his full height towering over her. "I'm inviting Oluchi to the baby's dedication," he said coldly. "You don't get to dictate who's in my life or not." Her face flushed with anger. "Ademila, this is the height of disrespect. You're bringing your whore to our baby's dedication." His voice dropped, each word cutting like ice. "Don't you dare call her that. Oluchi is a better woman than you'll ever be." The venom in his words left Olivia speechless. She stepped back, her chest heaving with anger and humiliation. "If you don't want her there, then fine," Ademila continued, his tone unwavering. "But I won't let you insult her in my presence." Without another word, he walked past her, leaving her standing there, stunned and seething. That evening, Olivia sat in the dimly lit kitchen, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. Her thoughts raced as she scrolled through her contacts, finally landing on a familiar name. She hesitated for a moment before pressing the call button. The line clicked, and Jennifer's voice came through, low and raspy. "Olivia," she said, a hint of mockery in her tone. "I was beginning to think you forgot about me." "Jennifer," Olivia began, her voice shaking. "I need your help." Jennifer chuckled darkly. "Let me guess. It's Ademila. He's still acting like you and the baby don't exist." Olivia swallowed hard, her anger bubbling to the surface. "He's getting worse. He's inviting Oluchi to the baby's dedication, and he doesn't even care how I feel about it." Jennifer's laughter was sharp and cold. "Olivia, you're becoming weak. What have you been doing all this time? Crying while he runs to Oluchi. You can't even get him to sleep with you since the baby arrived. Pathetic." Olivia clenched her fists, her voice rising. "I don't know what to do anymore, Jennifer. He's slipping further away, and I need something to change." Jennifer's tone shifted, becoming more sinister. "You know what to do, Olivia. It's time we activated Plan B." Olivia's stomach churned. "Plan B?" "Yes," Jennifer hissed. "It's time we took matters into our own hands. Ademila won't know what hit him." The darkness in her words sent a chill down Olivia's spine. She hesitated, her mind racing. "Are you sure about this, Jennifer?" Jennifer's laughter was filled with malice. "I've never been more sure of anything. Do you want him back or not?" Olivia closed her eyes, her heart pounding. "Yes," she whispered. "Then trust me," Jennifer said. "It's time to show Ademila who's really in control." Olivia sat in the dimly lit room, gripping her phone tightly, her knuckles white from the pressure. Jennifer's words rang in her ears, a haunting echo that made her heart race. "It's time to activate Plan B." Her heart pounded in her chest as she tried to steady her breath. She had hoped, desperately hoped, that it wouldn't come to this. But things had spiraled beyond her control. Ademila, the man she had given everything to, was slipping further away from her. The baby they had together was supposed to be the glue that bound them. Instead, it seemed to only remind him of the distance between them. Olivia squeezed her eyes shut, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to fall. She had done everything she could to keep him. She gave him everything. But instead of growing closer, he was running back to Oluchi, his ex, someone he claimed to have put behind him. She felt the weight of betrayal, sharper than any knife. "What exactly do you mean by Plan B?" Olivia whispered, her voice trembling with both fear and determination. Jennifer's laughter crackled over the phone, dark and knowing. "You're too soft, Olivia. If you want to keep a man, you need to make sure he has no other options. You're letting him slip away like a fool." Olivia swallowed hard, the words stinging her more than she cared to admit. "I don't want to kill anyone." Jennifer's voice was smooth, almost mocking. "Who said anything about killing? There are many ways to ruin someone's life without shedding a single drop of blood. Trust me." Olivia felt a cold shiver run down her spine. She had trusted Jennifer before, but this was darker than she had anticipated. There was a long silence before Olivia finally spoke again, the words falling from her lips like a heavy stone. "What do I have to do?" Meanwhile, Maxwell was tirelessly working to uncover the traitor who had betrayed Ademila at work. He had been following every lead, piecing together the puzzle. That evening, he dialed Ademila's number again. "Are you alone?" Maxwell asked, urgency in his voice. Ademila frowned, confusion flashing across his face. "No, I'm at home with Olivia and the baby." "Step outside," Maxwell urged. Ademila did as instructed, walking out onto the balcony, gripping his phone with both hands. "What did you find?" Maxwell sighed, the sound heavy with frustration. "It's Olivia, Ademila. She leaked your company's presentation to your competitors." Ademila's breath hitched, his mind flashing back to the unknown caller who had warned him about betrayal. His heart stopped. "That's impossible." "I have proof," Maxwell continued, his voice grim. "Emails, phone records. She was in contact with someone from the rival company weeks before your presentation was stolen." Ademila's mind reeled, his anger rising. "Why would she do that?" "Money," Maxwell said bluntly. "She's close to the owner of that company. And as if they had a relationship. One that's ongoing." Rage bubbled inside Ademila, but he forced himself to stay calm. He couldn't let the anger cloud his judgment. "Send me everything you have." "Be careful," Maxwell warned. "I have a feeling Olivia is up to something even darker. You know what they say, a desperate woman is dangerous." Despite the mounting tension, the baby's dedication went ahead as planned. Olivia had gone all out, ensuring it was a grand event. Extravagant decorations, expensive outfits, and a guest list full of influential people. She had to keep up the appearance, especially in front of her family. Oluchi, however, had other plans. She arrived at the venue in a simple but elegant gown, the calm aura around her striking in contrast to the drama surrounding Olivia. The moment Oluchi walked in, whispers filled the hall. Olivia had done everything to spread the rumor that Oluchi was a bitter ex, unable to move on from her past with Ademila. But Oluchi wasn't concerned. She had moved on, or at least she tried to believe she had. Ademila, on the other hand, couldn't take his eyes off her. He walked straight toward Oluchi, ignoring the disapproving glares from Olivia's side of the family. "You came," he said, his voice filled with relief and something else, something deeper. "Of course," Oluchi replied, a small smile playing on her lips. "I wouldn't miss it." Before they could speak further, Olivia approached them with a tight, fake smile. "Oluchi," Olivia greeted, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I'm surprised you had the courage to show up." Oluchi met her gaze, unbothered, her composure unwavering. "Why wouldn't I? I was invited." Olivia's eyes darkened, but she forced another smile. "Well, since you're here, enjoy yourself. But don't get too comfortable." Ademila's expression darkened, his irritation evident. "Enough." But Olivia wasn't done. She turned to Oluchi, her smirk widening. "By the way, how's Ikeen? I heard he recovered well. You two must be so in love." Oluchi saw through Olivia's game immediately. She wasn't going to let Olivia get under her skin. "Ikeen is fine, thank you," she said calmly, her voice steady as she met Olivia's eyes. Olivia's eyes flickered with irritation. She had expected a reaction, but Oluchi remained unshaken. Later that evening, Olivia excused herself from the chaos of the party and slipped outside to make a call. She was nervous but determined. "Is everything ready?" she whispered, glancing around to make sure no one was watching. "Yes," A male voice replied, calm and confident. "We move tomorrow." "Do it," Olivia ordered, her voice cold with resolve. She ended the call and walked back into the party, her smile returning as if nothing had happened. But inside, her mind was already planning the next step. Jennifer had called earlier, urging Olivia to prepare for what was to come. "We need to see Plan B in motion as soon as possible," Jennifer had said, her voice sharp with urgency. "A man will come to pick you up for the mission, and you need to prepare a maid for the baby. It's going to be a long journey, and the baby will not be part of it." Olivia had done as instructed. The next morning, she brought in a girl to take care of her baby. Early in the morning, she informed Ademila that she had received an emergency call and would be going to see her mother. The maid would stay with the baby while she was away. Ademila didn't question her, trusting that she knew what was best. "Why can't you go with the baby?" he asked, his voice soft with concern. "The journey won't be healthy for the baby," Olivia explained, her voice convincing. Ademila nodded, feeling less concerned as long as the maid would be taking care of the baby. It was none of his business. He had other things to focus on. As Olivia packed her small travel bag, she couldn't help but feel a sense of dread creeping in. Inside the bag, she placed a few carefully chosen items. Ademila's picture, his hair which she had cut while he slept, and Oluchi's picture, which she had printed from the internet. She also paid a stylist at Oluchi's salon to get a few strands of Oluchi's hair. Once everything was set, she left for her journey, her heart pounding in her chest. A man she had never met picked her up in a sleek Benz. He was silent as they drove, and Olivia couldn't help but ask, "Where are we going?" "To Zuzu," the man replied flatly. They drove for hours, deep into a village. As they parked and ventured into a thick forest, Olivia's fear began to swell. What was she getting herself into? Was this all worth it? But she quickly pushed the doubt away, her mind set on one thing. She had to have Ademila. After what felt like an eternity of walking, they arrived at a cemetery. It was surrounded by an eerie silence, the only sound the crunch of their footsteps on the dry ground. At the center stood a massive tree, its twisted branches reaching out like skeletal hands. Olivia froze, shock washing over her. This was it. This was Plan B. A cold wind blew through the cemetery as Olivia's heart pounded in her chest. The old man, draped in a flowing red gown, stood before her, his eerie gaze pinning her in place. His eyes burned with an unnatural glow, and his presence sent shivers down her spine. The man who had driven her to this place, the one she had trusted, suddenly took a step back. His voice was hollow, almost lifeless. "It's time for me to leave," he said. "I'll come back for you when you're done." Fear gripped Olivia as she watched him disappear into the darkness, leaving her alone with the old man. "Olivia," the old man spoke, his voice low and chilling. "Do not be afraid. I know why you're here." Her mouth felt dry. How did he know her name? Her hands trembled as she followed him deeper into the cemetery. The air smelled of damp earth and burning candles. She wanted to turn back, but something stronger than fear kept her moving forward. Her anger, her desperation. She had come too far. Back at Ademila's house, the baby's soft cries echoed through the quiet room. The maid moved like a machine, feeding, bathing, rocking the child without any emotion on her face. Ademila stood at a distance, arms crossed, watching. A strange feeling crawled up his chest. Olivia had left their baby in the hands of a stranger. How could she be so comfortable? As the maid prepared to feed the baby again, Ademila stepped forward for the first time. "Let me do it," he said. The maid hesitated before handing him the bottle. As he took it, a strange warmth spread through his hands. He had never fed the baby before. He had never even thought about it. But as he sat down, holding the child in his arms, something inside him shifted. The baby's small fingers clutched at his shirt, and as he watched the tiny lips suckle, a lump formed in his throat. He had never known this feeling before. Love. Or was it guilt? Oluchi's phone rang, breaking the silence of her room. She was working on her laptop when she saw Ekin's name flash across the screen. "Hey, beautiful." His deep voice sent a warm flutter through her stomach. "Ekin," she smiled. "I wasn't expecting your call. I want to take you out for lunch," he said. "I know a place you'll love." Her heart skipped. "I'd love that." After the call, she sat there, smiling to herself. Her mind was a mess. She liked Ekin. She really did. But she also still loved Ademola. Shaking the thoughts away, she stood up and went to prepare for lunch. Back at Zuzu, Olivia's legs felt weak as she followed the old man into a small, dark hut in the middle of the cemetery. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of burning herbs. Voodoo artifacts covered the walls. Red and black candles flickered, casting eerie shadows. A large calabash sat in the center of the room, its surface covered in strange symbols. The old man lowered himself to the floor, crossing his legs. He motioned for Olivia to sit opposite him. "Many have come to me for love," he said. "Women tying their husbands, mothers breaking their sons from their wives, side chicks stealing the hearts of married men. I have seen it all." Olivia swallowed hard, staring at him in disbelief. "But remember," he continued, his voice grave, "for every desire there is a price. Are you ready to pay it?" Her hands clenched into fists. She thought of Ademola, of how he had humiliated her, abandoned her. She thought of Oluchi, the woman who had stolen everything from her. "Baba, I am ready," she said, her voice firm. The old man studied her for a moment, then nodded. "The price to snatch a heart by force is heavy. Once this is done, there is no turning back." Olivia's eyes burned with determination. "I don't care. I want Ademola to love me alone. In this life and the next. I want him to hate every other woman, especially Oluchi. I want his body to respond to no one but me." The old man stood before the calabash, his arms raised. "Speak your desires." Olivia took a deep breath. "Ademola, from today you will love me alone. You will hate every other woman. Your body will never rise for another except me." The old man nodded. "So shall it be." He turned to Olivia, his expression dark. "The second phase of the ritual begins tomorrow. You must stay here for 3 days to complete it." Olivia shivered. 3 days. She had expected something difficult. But she wasn't prepared for what was coming next. Ekin arrived at Oluchi's house in his sleek SUV, and as they drove, they laughed like old friends. Instead of a regular restaurant, he took her to a karaoke club. "I just want us to have fun," he grinned. "No stress, just happiness." She smiled. It had been a long time since she had felt this free. As they sat, watching others perform, Ekin leaned closer. "I dare you to go up there." Oluchi's eyes widened. "Me? No way. Come on," he urged. "I know you've always wanted to." She hesitated but took the mic. As she sang, something inside her loosened. She felt free. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't thinking about Ademola. Ekin watched her, his eyes full of admiration. The audience cheered. And for the first time, Oluchi felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Back at Ademola's office, his phone buzzed. It was Maxwell. "I have more details," Maxwell said. "Olivia, she's been playing you. She's dating the owner of the rival company that stole your presentation. Someone in your office helped her get those contract papers. The pregnancy was never part of the plan. It changed everything." Ademola felt his stomach turn. "I went with Olivia for a DNA test. I saw the results myself." "That man is a big shot, Ademola," Maxwell interrupted. "He can manipulate anything with money. You need another DNA test. This time do it secretly." Ademola's mind raced. "I'll send you to a reliable hospital," Maxwell continued. "We'll get the truth before Olivia returns." Ademola swallowed hard. He had trusted Olivia. But now he wasn't sure of anything anymore. Back at Zuzu, Olivia sat before the old man again. "Bring the items," he ordered. With shaking hands, she pulled out Ademila and Oluchi's pictures. She also handed him strands of their hair. The old man dropped the hair into the calabash. Then he took the pictures and rubbed them with black pepper. As this pepper burns their faces, so shall their love burn and destroy them, he muttered. He took 2 small wooden figures, one male, one female. He tied Oluchi's picture to the female and Ademila's to the male. Then, he turned them away from each other and bound them with a red rope. As I tie this, so shall they turn their backs on each other forever. Finally, he placed the figures in a box, locked it, and handed Olivia the key. No, I must see this, he warned. Olivia clutched the key, her heart pounding. Tomorrow we go to the graveyard, he whispered. For the final ritual. A cold shiver ran down Olivia's spine. This was becoming more than she had bargained for. Her phone buzzed. It was Jennifer. Olivia. Jennifer's voice was firm. This is the price you pay. Prepare yourself. Sacrifices will be demanded. Olivia froze. Sacrifices. She hadn't asked what the final price would be. And now, she was too deep to turn back. Olivia stood frozen, her heart pounding at the weight of Jennifer's words. There is a price to pay. Her mind raced. A price. What does she mean? For a moment, fear gripped her, but she shook it off. Whatever it was, she was ready. She had come too far to turn back now. Nothing is too much to capture Ademila's heart. As she clenched her fists, determination burned in her eyes. I will do whatever it takes, she whispered to herself. Ademila paced back and forth in his office, his mind in turmoil. Everything was happening too fast, and he needed answers. Without hesitation, he rushed to Oluchi's office. When she saw him, she smiled and teased. Ademila, you didn't even call before coming. But the look on his face made her expression change. His usual charm was gone, replaced by an intensity that sent chills down her spine. This is important, he said, his voice urgent. I hired a private investigator. Olivia has been dating the owner of a rival company. I think she might have set me up. The baby. It may not even be mine. Oluchi's breath hitched. What? Her voice was barely a whisper. Ademila ran a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. I need to run another DNA test, but this time it has to be done secretly. A heavy silence filled the room. Oluchi tried to gather her thoughts. The information was too much to process at once. Ademila looked at her. Say something, Oluchi. She exhaled slowly and met his gaze. I believe you can handle this, Ademila, she said softly. I don't know what else to say. You have to do what is right. He nodded, his mind made up. Night had fallen over Zuzu. The eerie old man stood in his flowing red robe, his glowing white eyes piercing through the darkness. Olivia followed him to the graveside, her hands trembling slightly. This is the second phase of the ritual, the old man announced, his voice deep and haunting. Tonight you will sleep with a dead man. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. What? The old man's eyes burned into hers. I will conjure Ademila's spirit to enter the dead man. He will take Ademila's form, and when he comes alive, he will make love to you. From that moment, you and Ademila will be inseparable forever. Olivia's entire body went cold. The thought of lying with a corpse, no matter the magic behind it, made her stomach churn. The old man noticed her hesitation. You have come too far to stop now, he said firmly. Great things come with great sacrifice. Her breathing was shaky. She wanted to run, but she forced herself to stay. This is for Ademila. This is for my future. I'm ready, Baba, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. The old man smiled, his lips curling in satisfaction. Lie down on the grave. Olivia's legs felt weak, but she obeyed. The coldness of the tombstone sent shivers down her spine as she lay on top of it. The old man lifted his staff and began to chant. The wind howled, the ground trembled, and suddenly a man appeared. He had Ademola's face, but his eyes were empty, his body swaying as if in a drunken state. Olivia gasped. "Ademola! Silence!" the old man commanded. "That is his spirit." The old man raised his staff and slammed it against the ground. "Ademola! Ademola! Ademola!" The spirit's eyes focused, and suddenly, he rushed toward Olivia. "My love," he murmured, his hands grabbing her as he kissed her deeply. "I've missed you. Where have you been?" Tears filled Olivia's eyes. Felt so real. His lips, his touch, everything was as she had dreamed. She surrendered herself to him as they made passionate love on top of the grave. The old man continued to chant, calling spirits to witness their union. When it was over, Ademola's spirit stood up. The old man raised his staff once more. "As you return to your body, you will remember nothing of this night. But your heart will belong only to Olivia. You will love only her, and you will hate Oluchi or any other woman." With that, the spirit of Ademola disappeared. At that exact moment in his bedroom, Ademola tossed and turned. Sweat drenched his body as he struggled against an unseen force. In his dream, he saw Olivia standing over him with a cutlass. He tried to run, but his legs wouldn't move. He fell into a ditch, and just as Olivia raised the cutlass to strike him, he woke up, gasping for air. His heart pounded violently. Sweat trickled down his forehead, and his entire body ached. "What kind of nightmare is this?" he muttered. He sat up, his head throbbing. Something felt strange. His clothes were damp. His mouth tasted different, almost metallic. He wiped his lips, frowning. He felt sick. Something was wrong. The maid entered the room. "Sir, are you okay? Get me some painkillers," he managed to say. She nodded and hurried out. Ademola leaned back, closing his eyes. "Why do I feel like I've been somewhere else?" Just then, his thoughts drifted to Olivia. Why hasn't she called me? A strange warmth filled his chest at the thought of her. I need to see her. Oluchi decided to visit Auntie Ego, who had invited her over for lunch at her mansion. The dining table was filled with different delicacies, and when Auntie Ego saw Oluchi, she hugged her tightly. "You look better, Oluchi," she said warmly. Oluchi laughed. "Auntie, you never age. What's your secret?" They both chuckled as they sat to eat. But just as Oluchi lifted her spoon, her phone rang. She frowned at the unknown number but answered anyway. "Oluchi." Her body stiffened. She knew that voice. Jennifer. Her grip on the phone tightened. "Leave me the hell alone, Jennifer," she snapped. "You betrayed me, and now you're acting like the victim." Jennifer laughed, a cold, wicked sound. "I betrayed you. Oh, Oluchi, you're so blind." Oluchi's chest rose and fell rapidly. "You're bitter," she hissed. "I pray you heal." Jennifer's voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "I will heal, but you will never have peace. As long as I live, I will make sure you suffer." Chills ran down Oluchi's spine. "You think Ademola loves you?" Jennifer continued. "Let's see how that love works out for you." A wicked laugh echoed through the phone before the line went dead. Oluchi felt her hands tremble. She sank into her chair, her chest tightening. Auntie Ego rushed to her side. "Oluchi, what is it?" Tears filled Oluchi's eyes. "Why is Jennifer so wicked? She was my best friend. We grew up together. Why does she want to destroy me?" Auntie Ego sighed. "You don't have to offend someone for them to hate you. Your best friend today can become your worst enemy tomorrow." Oluchi wiped her tears. Deep down, she knew Auntie Ego was right. But she also knew one thing for sure. Jennifer was up to something. Back at Zuzu, the second ritual was completed, and they hurried back to the old man's mud hut, their hearts heavy with anticipation. She stood before him, his deep, knowing eyes scanned her face. He took a slow breath and finally spoke. "The last phase of the ritual is the hardest," he said in a voice that carried both mystery and warning. This is the stage where you must pay the price for the love you seek. The spirits demand something very dear to you in exchange. Olivia's heart pounded. Something dear to me, she whispered, her voice barely audible. A cold shiver ran through her body as fear crawled into her chest. What could that mean? What was she supposed to give? She glanced at the old man. The old man watched her closely, as if he could hear her thoughts. Then, with a solemn nod, he said, "We will find out tomorrow." Silence filled the room, thick with unspoken fears. Olivia felt her stomach twist. What if the price was too much? What if the spirits asked for something she could never give? As the night stretched on, dread settled deep inside her, and for the first time since the rituals began, she wondered, was this love truly worth it? That night, Ademola lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. His body was tired, but his mind wouldn't let him rest. For the first time in a long while, he missed Olivia. He didn't just miss her. He longed for her, craved her presence like a starving man craved food. His heart pounded as images of her flooded his mind. He imagined holding her, whispering in her ear, running his fingers through her hair. He had spent so much time trying to move on, trying to ignore the chaos she had brought into his life. But tonight was different. Then his phone rang. Maxwell. Ademola sighed and picked up the call. "Guy, I don't arrange the DNA test," Maxwell said without greeting. His voice was calm but firm. Ademola frowned. "Which DNA test?" Maxwell paused. "The one we talked about. You asked me to help you arrange a DNA test for your baby." Ademola sat up, confused. "Me? When did I say that?" Maxwell was silent for a moment. "Ademola, are you all right? We had this discussion just a few days ago. You were worried. You wanted to be sure. Forget about that nonsense." Ademola cut in, his voice sharp. "Olivia is my woman. She is the mother of my child. End of discussion." Maxwell's stomach tightened. Something was wrong. This wasn't the Ademola he knew. "Ademola, listen. Forget it," Ademola said, his tone final. The call ended abruptly. Maxwell stared at his phone, shaking his head. His best friend was acting strange, and he had a bad feeling about it. Ademola dropped the phone on his bedside table and exhaled deeply. His head was spinning. Why would Maxwell say such a thing? Why would he doubt Olivia? As if on cue, his fingers moved to his phone, and before he knew it, he was dialing Olivia's number. Olivia was sitting in the dimly lit mudroom when her phone vibrated in her hand. She glanced at the screen and nearly dropped the phone. "Ademola." A strange smile spread across her lips. She answered. "Ademola. This one that you're calling me. Hope I'm safe." Ademola chuckled softly. "You are safe, my love. I miss you." His voice was thick with longing. "I miss you so much. I can't wait to have you back." Olivia's heart swelled with satisfaction. It had begun. Her lips curled into a knowing smile as she leaned back. "You miss me," she whispered, her voice dripping with sweetness. "Too much," Ademola admitted. His head felt heavy, like something was controlling him, pulling him deeper into his emotions for her. "I just want us to be together again." Olivia closed her eyes and breathed in deeply. It was working. The sacrifice was pulling him closer to her. But it wasn't complete. "Not yet," she whispered. "Don't worry, my love. Very soon we will be together forever." At Zuzu, Olivia sat before the old man, her hands shaking slightly. The air was thick with incense smoke, curling around the room like ghostly fingers. The old man's glowing eyes bored into her soul. "The spirits are ready," he murmured. Olivia swallowed hard. "What do they want?" The old man smiled, an eerie, knowing smile. "A sacrifice." Her chest tightened. "What kind of sacrifice?" "You must give up something that holds deep meaning to you. Something irreplaceable." Her breath hitched. What could that be? Her money. Her freedom. Then, the old man spoke the words that sent ice through her veins. You must take the life of someone you love. Her body stiffened. The room felt like it was closing in on her. What? She whispered. The old man's face remained calm. Blood for love. This is the price. Olivia's mind raced. She had sacrificed so much already. Her dignity, her body, her peace of mind. All for Ademila. But this. Her heartbeat thundered. The only person she truly loved. Her baby. A tear slipped down her cheek. Her little boy. The one person who had never betrayed her. The only innocent soul in her life. She looked at the old man, her body shaking violently. I can't. The old man leaned forward. Then you will never have Ademila. You will lose everything. And he will hate you forever. The words sliced through her like a dagger. She had fought too hard, suffered too much. She clenched her fists. Her voice shook. I will do it. The old man nodded and turned to a large mirror in the shrine. He beckoned for her to come forward. Call his name 3 times. Tears streamed down Olivia's face as she whispered her baby's name. Once, 3 times. The mirror trembled and suddenly an image appeared. Her baby, sleeping peacefully. The old man's voice was steady. Say the words. Her lips quivered. Her body shook. But she forced herself to speak. I exchange your life for the love of Ademila. A gust of wind swept through the room. The old man raised his staff and struck the ground. And just like that, it was done. Ademila shot up from bed, clutching his head. A sharp, searing pain ripped through his skull. His vision blurred. His breathing became ragged. A deep, burning need filled his chest. Olivia. His hands trembled. He had to see her. He had to be with her. Just then, a piercing scream rang through the house. Sir, come quick. The baby. He's not breathing. Ademila's heart stopped. He ran out of his room, nearly tripping over himself. His legs carried him to the nursery at a speed he didn't know he was capable of. The maid was sobbing, holding the limp body of his baby. Ademila snatched the child from her. His breath coming in shallow gasps. No, 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 no. His voice cracked with desperation. His baby's tiny chest wasn't rising. His lips were slightly parted. His small fingers were ice cold. Somebody help me! Ademila roared as he sprinted to his car, cradling his son. He drove like a madman, his hands gripping the wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. His vision blurred with unshed tears. At the hospital, nurses rushed forward, taking the baby from him. Minutes felt like hours. Ademila paced the waiting room, his entire body drenched in sweat. Then the doctor walked in. His expression was grave. Ademila's stomach clenched. The doctor sighed. I'm sorry, Mr. Ademila. We lost the baby. The words slammed into Ademila like a wrecking ball. His knees buckled and he collapsed into a chair, burying his face in his hands. His baby. Just like that. How would he tell Olivia? How would he live with himself? Back in Zuzu, the sacrifice was complete. The old man turned to Olivia. You must return every 6 months to renew the charm. And no one must ever see the box. She nodded, her mind numb. As her driver took her back to the city, she stared blankly at the road ahead. There was no turning back now. She had done the unthinkable. And now, Ademila was wrapped around her fingers. But at what cost?